TG Geeks, episode 145, November 27th, 2017. Box office receipts in the Multiverse. Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, you name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from out of the Turkey Coma TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
And I'm Ben Raggington, also coming to you from winter is coming, because we're going to be getting a high of under 80 degrees in the next week or so in Phoenix, Arizona.
Exactly. Well, we have a interview. We talked about it last time. That Zachry Wheeler from Max and the Multiverse and Transient. He's talking about a new book that he released, and we're going to just launch right into it. And this time we have a returning guest, Mr. Zachry Wheeler, who has written a couple of books, and he has a new one that is coming out. Welcome to the show, Zachry.
Hello, guys. How's it going? Good to see you again.
Good.
Or hear you again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if I peer really closely through my microphone.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I can see you on the other end of that monitor.
Been waiting for that technology.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so tell us who Zachry Wheeler is and what's your background and how you got into writing, and then we'll talk about what you've written and already published, and then this new thing that you published. So who is Zachry Wheeler?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. And Zachry Wheeler is a science fiction novelist based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am a relatively new author because I never really set out to become an author. My background is in IT. I've been a web applications developer for the last 20 years, and a lot of that involves technical writing, wikis, manuals, user specs, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I like to say I've been a professional writer for longer than I've been a writer.
There you go.
I never even knew I was doing this kind of stuff, and I started. I've always been a big fan of science fiction. I had a couple of interesting ideas that I started writing down, and they eventually turned into books. And the writing bug bit me hard. I started doing other writing projects, like I had a craft beer review site, brewchief.com. I had a mock news site, the Harrington Post. And I started to really enjoy the process, and I really started gravitating towards manuscripts, longer stories, big narratives, and it just ran from there.
Yeah. So since you have a background in doing technical writing, you know how to do a draft and a basic outline,
mm-hmm.
And so that I would think that would lead. Well, it could get in some people's way, depending.
Oh yeah, like the way I like to put it is most programmers are actually competent writers. They just don't know it because It takes a certain skill to be able to translate machine code into meaningful user instruction. Yeah. That's why technical writing is a career in and of itself. You have to have a command of the language in order to translate that, and the technical writers that are good are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. That's cool. So tell us, you also have another little thing in the closet, shall we say, that you used to do. You had a band or several bands.
Oh my word, that's right. I forgot about that. Yes, the CDs.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That was my original. Like, the one thing I like to say is I always have my creative delusion, whatever that is. For a long time, it was music, and I started off really early. That was one of my earliest passions, and I had a small band in college that went nowhere. Then after I graduated, I started Sidewinder, which, and by the way, this is all hard rock in variations of. And Sidewinder had some success. I put out 2 albums there, and I had some national radio attention. Even got spotlighted on MTV.
Hey.
Back when they were, playing music.
Exactly.
Shows you how long ago it's been. But and I did. Then when we moved out to Seattle, I joined that scene under an experimental rock hybrid called the Mayamatic. That was a blend of techno and hard rock, and I really enjoyed it. That was a lot of fun, but at that point, I was starting to crest my musical interest because I really liked performing, and performing is definitely a young man's game. So, I definitely enjoy sitting back in my quiet room with my computer and writing fun stories rather than bouncing around the stage. So.
Or unless you're doing acoustic sets,
Exactly.
You just sit there in
and
a chair.
I loved the energetic shows of hard rock, and if I perform, that's what I always gravitated to, and it just got to be exhausting.
Yeah. Have you seen Queen with Adam Lambert?
No, I haven't.
Oh gosh, we saw that on the
Oh, my
News of the
Lord.
World 40th anniversary tour, and it was amazing.
We were the first stop, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Now,
So-
there are a couple of bands still out there, Queen being one of them, that I would absolutely go to see live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I
it
used
was
to
a great
be
show.
concert fiend. But go ahead, I'll interrupt.
I was gonna say it was just a great show, and it shows that with guys like Brian and Roger. I mean, yeah, you can be old farts and still rock with the best.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one thing that I absolutely love about Queen, just as from a personal connection, is I remember learning that Brian was an astrophysicist.
Yes!
Exactly.
And that just, as if I couldn't love him enough.
Exactly.
I know,
It's
he's got
just
that.
like you're now at idol stage.
I know he's got that doctorate now. It's
Yeah.
Dr. Brian May. I think that just makes the man infinitely more cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting you said I didn't realize that you had moved to Seattle and lived in Seattle. So that kind of explains one of your other books that you have. Was it the first one was Transient?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Is set in
Mhm.
Seattle and its environs in
Yeah.
a different time.
It's funny you say that. Sometimes I'll get the question of why I set it in Seattle, and of course it's you're always expecting a sexy answer, and mine is distinctly not. It's like I was living there at the time when I wrote the first draft.
There
So
you go.
I just I could give it proper treatment because I knew the area. So
Yeah.
that's really the only reason that Transient is set in Seattle.
Right. We talked to an author yesterday who's just released a novel that's set in New Mexico, and we asked her, or I asked her, because I lived in Albuquerque for 8 years, and I said, "Where in New Mexico is it set?" And she said, "Well, I kind of came as a generic area rather than pinpointing something because I didn't want people to get mad at me if I did it wrong,
Yeah.
So, because she's not from Albuquerque or from
Yep.
New Mexico, so you know how people are,
Oh, yeah.
especially New Mexicans.
I think it's
Very
everywhere.
touchy about where they live.
I think that's anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Transient was your first novel, and it
Mhm.
just real brief synopsis of that, or just a brief blurb about that, shall we say?
Sure. So, Transient is a post-apocalyptic reimagination of the vampire legend. At a baseline, it's a survival tale about what it means to be human. Additionally, it's a socio-political analysis of what it means to be immortal. This is not fantasy or horror. It is sci-fi noir.
Yep. And I loved it. I
I
was
thought it was fantastic. I couldn't put it down.
Fabulous.
Thank you. We had a great discussion on the last interview. So, any
Yeah.
reader is curious, I definitely, or any listener is curious, I definitely recommend going and checking that one out. That was a
Yeah.
fun discussion.
And we'll put the link to that episode in
In the show notes.
Cool.
And so then you released Max and the Multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And did we talk about that one last time? I think
We talked a bit about it, yeah.
about it.
A little bit, yeah.
Man.
Transient was most of the focus, but yeah, we
Right.
touched on Max.
Max was such a wild ride. It was incredible. And for anybody, and I'm going to say it now, Zachry has captured Douglas Adams' muse with Max in the Universe.
Thank you.
Because it was so Douglas Adams. It really was.
And that is hands down the best compliment you can give me, because Douglas has been my favorite author since childhood. So my dream as an author is to pick up that sci-fi comedy mantle that he left behind.
Yeah. Some of his Doctor Who episodes are some of the best episodes, and we
yes,
rewatch them routinely. You know?
Yes, completely agree.
So, tell us a little bit of what is Max and the Multiverse about, and then that leads into the new thing.
Sure. So Max and the Multiverse is a straight-up sci-fi comedy along the lines of Douglas Adams. It's a wild romp through the multiverse with all sorts of insane characters. So it's definitely a laugh-out-loud comedy. And Max, the protagonist, is... So a little backstory on that is the whole idea for Max and the Multiverse came out because whenever you're talking about stories and television shows that have to deal with the multiverse, more oftentimes than not, there's a reason to interact with them. You know, there's always a mission. You know, think Stargate or Doctor Who for that matter.
Right.
You know, there's always a reason to interact with them. So I got an idea one day thinking, okay, what if someone was thrust into the multiverse against their will? You know, just had to deal with it, was forced to interact with it, and then the comedy comes from having to deal with that shift.
Yeah.
So and then that further blossomed into, okay, now what if you wake up into the multiverse? You're not just kind of shifting randomly. So
right.
That's where the Max story, or the Max and the Multiverse core story came from. And I came up with a little idea of why he is now waking up in a new universe every time he falls asleep, and the story sprung from there.
Just realized it's got a bit of a Kurt Vonnegut Jr. vibe too.
A
bit of a Slaughterhouse
that. Yeah,
Five.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was completely unintentional, but thank you for that.
It just occurred to me as you were saying that. Like, well, that sounds a lot like our chief character in Slaughterhouse.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I'm actually ashamed I hadn't thought about that.
Well, you were so into what you were doing, you know. At the moment, It's like I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Classic of the genre.
So, you have a next episode of Max and the Multiverse.
Yes, Max and the Snoodlecock.
Okay.
And say that very carefully.
Very carefully.
There might have been a little juvenile intention with that.
Of course. Why not?
It's definitely there to garner an immediate laugh. It's like, I just want people to immediately ask, what the hell is a Snoodlecock?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what the hell
sounds
is
like
a
something
Snoodlecock?
It sounds like something out of a Dr. Seuss book, but I'd rather hear your description.
Yes. Well, mine gets a little bit more anti-Seuss, but that's okay. So Snoodlecock is without giving too much away, it's a colorful bird-like creature. Max, the protagonist, initially describes it as a disco chicken.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
he plays an integral role in this story. So he's one of the new faces in the sequel.
Aha. So
Him and another character, Phil, which I won't give any spoilers, tend to be a very large comedic element of the sequel.
aha. So Max and the Multiverse ends, and they go for a moment, and then Max and the Snoodlecock picks up. And where does it pick up, and where does it go?
So it picks up shortly after the first book. So it's very little time has changed, or very little time has passed since the first book ended and the second book began. So now that they are a band, they are a team, they are a crew, they stop by a space station for a resupply and get targeted by unknown assailants, and that kicks off the story for the sequel.
Aha. kind of reminiscent of the first book.
Similar, but
Yeah.
I'd like to, and there is some tie-in to the first book, but it's not just it's definitely not a rehash. It's a very hard veer.
Right. So that sounds fascinating. I've downloaded it. I just, as I told Carrie yesterday, actually we talked to Carrie Merrill. You pointed us to her at Phoenix Comic-Con.
Oh, nice.
And so we talked to her yesterday, and she has a new book that just released as well.
Oh, good.
Where was I going with this?
You just downloaded his book.
Oh, yes. And I have hers, and I have like 4 others, and it's like I read the first page of one, and then I said, I have too many things to do. Too many shiny objects,
Oh my goodness, Comic-Con is notorious for that too.
Oh my God!
Even as an author manning a booth, I always leave Comic-Con with like 7 or 8 new books on my to-read pile. It never fails, so it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. And that's why I'm actually very happy to have Max 2 out, because I'm going to spend most of the holidays just catching up on my to-read pile.
Yeah, that happened to me. I mean, this Comic-Con in end of May this year, I had 10 books at the end of it. It's like, really? When do I have time to read these books?
Yeah.
But I did.
Better to have too many than none at all. So.
Exactly, and I'm always looking for something to read. I have next week off, so
oh good.
I may actually
spend all your time catching up.
Catching up, exactly. Yeah. So we had asked last time about, and it's Ben's favorite question to ask authors.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
So we're going to ask it again, just for our listeners.
And that's when you're writing these books, how fully fleshed out and fully realized are the characters? In other words, when you start writing, are they like alive in your brain and they're simply telling you what to write, and are you simply taking dictation from them?
That's a great question. I would say there's a mixture of both, and many times it's situational. Because should I be inside an integral plot point, usually they're telling me, because their personalities are driving that narrative. So I'm not forcing anything into their dialogue. They are reacting exactly as I would expect them to react. So it very much is a dictation. Now on the flip side, if it's say it's a casual environment where they're just hanging around the ship, or with transient, say it's like just hanging around the streets or in a store, something where it's there's not any major action push, then it becomes a much more thoughtful exploration of maybe I can add something to their personality that the reader is not expecting, or maybe I can shift it a little bit to make the plot a little bit more, to raise the stakes, so to speak, or something like that. So then it becomes much more of a I'm going to manipulate the character or consciously manipulate the character from a writing perspective.
Yeah, so it's character development then in
yes.
those times, and universe, development as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's cool.
Now, Max is a good example of this, because whenever I'm in an action-packed moment, the characters are very much driving it by themselves. But whenever it's lesser action scenes, then a lot of it becomes about the comedy, and I'm thinking about the comedy much more than I am about their personality driving how they're eating a sandwich.
Right.
So it becomes a much more thoughtful process, because I need to be able to keep the reader interested by something interesting.
Right.
Or not. That's a very generic way to put it. By paying attention to the humor element.
Exactly. So, do you have something else in the works? Are you currently working on another Max, or something to follow up with Transient? I don't know where that could go. It seems like it could go someplace too.
Oh yeah, both books are parts of planned series. So now that Max is out, and considering the Transient movie in development, I've switched all my focus onto the sequel to Transient.
Okay.
Now, Transient is much more mapped out because it needs to be. The environment is much more rigid. The timelines are much more rigid. So I have to spend a lot of time pseudo outlining the whole series, and it has been. I just need to sit down and get to work and get it out. But the first chapter has already been written. It's been written for a while. I know where I want to take it. I just need to get to work. But Max 3, I have absolutely no idea where they're going.
But I seem to remember in the last time we talked to you that you approached both the Max series, or the Max Multiverse, and Transient in totally different ways.
Oh, very much.
Your approaches, as you said, you had Transient sort of, you had it kind of mapped out. You have to think about it. But Max, it felt like you were kind of writing that sort of by the seat of your pants.
Very much so. And you have to with Max, because whenever you're dealing with a comedy in the multiverse, there's just no way you can map that out.
Right.
There's for the sequel, I knew 2 overarching things that I wanted to accomplish, and I can't say those because they're major spoilers. But I had no idea how I was going to get there. I just knew I wanted to get there. So at any given point in the story, I have no idea where it's going to end up. But that's a really fun way to write, especially for comedy, because there are several pieces of Max 2 that I'm especially proud of, is from a comedic standpoint, that I had no intentions of getting to. It just came through the narrative and direction.
Wow.
And I love when that happens. Now, I can't do that with Transient because I need to adhere to a very rigid timeline,
Right.
a very rigid environment. I need to maintain a very specific tone, and there's just no way to do that organically. I have to, or at least if you can, they're better writers than I am.
Yeah.
I really need to focus on Transient, and I need to get into the mood for Transient. I mean, Transient's a much darker place. And the sequel to Transient is also going to be a pretty deep dive into some serious issues. So it's even I have to even be in the right state of mind to write that.
Wow.
Now, Max, I can pick up at any time and just write a paragraph here, a chapter, and just have fun doing it. And it's completely valid because the multiverse makes it so.
Right.
I can throw into any what-if situation, and the writing is validated.
Yeah. So Max is your relief valve.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So when you need to switch over to the Transient kind of writing, what kind of mental discipline do you go through in order to put yourself into that frame of mind? Because obviously you just can't, as you said, you just can't switch gears like that because they're just so wildly different.
I tried to do that initially because I knew I was going to be working on the Transient sequel, and I knew I was going to be working on the Max sequel. But and I tried to do them concurrently because the Transient movie was kind of dictating which one I was focusing on at the time. And it got to the point where I just couldn't do it. It was too hard of a switch. So I shelved Transient 2, and my goal was to work on Max 2 until the point where the Transient movie got greenlit for production. And at that point, I was going to switch over to Transient. But we still haven't gotten there yet, so it allowed me to actually complete Max 2, which was a great stress relief because I was so close to getting Max out. I was like, please don't go to production. Please don't go to production. I'm too close. I don't want to switch my focus at this point. But now that that's out, I've been able to shift my mental state back to the Transient world. So I'm definitely there, and it helps because I don't have to think about the ongoing story with Max. I can just let it sit, and now I can just stay in the world of and study that world because whenever I start picking up Transient 2, well, not whenever, now that I'm picking up Transient 2 again, I'm now thinking about this part in the first book, or like chapter 8 dictates that chapter 8 of the first one dictates that I have to go this direction, or that kind of stuff. So now I'm in a much more analysis mode rather than a whimsical mode.
Right. So tell us about the movie. Where is that, and what's happening there?
Oh yes. So what's the last thing you remember from from our previous
It
conversation?
was in development.
Yeah, they were still in development, and
Okay.
of
So
course,
I got a couple
stuff
of
stays
bond
in
mods.
development hell for a while. So
Yes. So I'll see what I can. I'm pretty sure I can disclose all of this, and I have been, and the executive producer hasn't yelled at me, so I'll be able to do that. So did you see the lookbook that the executive producer put out?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I
So-
did see that. I think I don't know if you made that available on social media or if you just emailed
Yes.
that to it. Yeah, I do remember seeing that, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, they want to get these people."
Yes.
Right,
So
right.
I had no idea what a lookbook was before he sent it to me. And this was extreme. So for anyone listening that doesn't know what a lookbook is, whenever a movie is in development, what the producers will do is create this document that is basically a statement of intent for the production company, because they don't know that the production companies are not going to take a risk on something that they don't understand what they're getting themselves into. So a lookbook like determines tone and casting targets, and they can actually. And what I didn't know is casting can actually sign on to a project that actually hasn't been in production yet, because it helps them set a budget and it helps the production company make an educated decision. So they can say, yes, this person is interested in doing the part should it get greenlit for production. So that helps them out. And then it talks about budgets and looks and sounds and feel and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically almost like a business plan for the movie. And then they use that to set a finalized budget to get a greenlit for production. So that's where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the names that came out blew my mind.
Yeah.
So remember how we were talking about before that the producer was saying was teasing that they were pursuing a Game of Thrones actor,
Right.
And I didn't know, and of course I'm thinking, okay, whatever, there's going to be like some third tier guy that was in a couple of episodes. It's like, oh yeah, that dude, I remember him. It was like, no, Sophie Turner,
right.
Yeah.
Sansa Stark herself.
Yeah, big name.
I could not believe that. So they are pursuing her, Stephen Amell, Miles Tiller,
Yeah.
and Val Kilmer. And apparently the producer has spoken to Val himself, because he's a local guy. He lives in Santa Fe.
Oh wow.
So apparently Val is interested in the project, which just about melted my brain.
I
So-
didn't remember the Val, but I remember Miles and Stephen Amell, and I remember when I saw those, my jaw just literally just hit the
Yep.
floor, and I
Yep.
thought, "Oh my God, this would be the greatest thing ever if this were actually
Oh my
pulled
God,
off."
yes. So it was one of those moments where when I got the lookbook, I had to kind of step away and just kind of pace around the house. I was like, is this happening? This is a very surreal moment.
Yeah.
It went from wouldn't this be neat to holy crap, this might actually happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's been a very, very wild ride with that. And so if anyone is interested in looking at anyone listening that wants to listen to or look at the lookbook, it's available on my website, ZachryWheeler.com. You can check that out. Just go to the news section, you'll see a link. And then the other thing that happened, and this was a very happy series of improbable events, was after the Santa Fe Comic-Con, I was actually able to meet the head writer that the executive producer has for the script, and he got pulled away to another project. And there were some revisions that came back from the production company, and they're working on some things, and the producer asked me if I would like to do them. So I
cool.
actually got my hands on the script
Oh wow.
and was able to go through, and he gave me the green light to make sure the tone was right, make sure timelines were right, because I was the source creator. So it was like, I want to make sure that there's no, continuity mistakes and all that kind of stuff. So I was actually able to go through the entire script myself.
Ooh, nice.
And make revisions, make sure things were copacetic. And the crazy thing about that is that gives me a screenwriting credit on the movie.
I was
Right,
about to
I was
say
gonna say,
that. Yeah.
Does
Yes.
does it give a created by or?
Yes. So
Okay.
now I'm going to get now 2 credits on the on the movie.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Written by me, based on the book by me. So
Cool.
So that just blew my mind. So that was a happy accident. So thank you, head screenwriter, for going off to do another thing.
Yeah. Without giving anything away, did you notice any, I don't say deviations, but obviously you can't film a movie exactly the same way it is written. It just doesn't work that way.
Yes.
Have you noticed some, what were some of the changes, without, like I said, without really going spoilery?
Yes.
I mean, what were some of the things
I can disclose some of that. They're not spoilers or anything like that. So one of the biggest things that the executive producer and I were talking about, which I completely agree with, is that the book is much more cerebral. It is not like an action flow book.
Right.
It's very much a deep dive into like socio-political ramifications and explorations of opposing factions, where your loyalties lie, that kind of stuff. So from a screenwriter's perspective, it would be it would be a hard one to sell. You know, it's like the psychological slow drama. So there had to be much more of action-based transitions. And that's some of the stuff that ended up getting added and modified. So it's a much more moderately paced screenplay rather than the book is. And I completely get that and completely agree with that. So that was some of the tweaks that needed to be made.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. But they were able to maintain the tone, which was the biggest thing I was worried about. And they used a majority of my original dialogue. And that was another thing I was very happy about. So there was no, cliched nonsense. There was no reliance on crutches or anything like that. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that. So they have taken this very seriously, and they've done a really good job in translating it to film.
Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a go at this point.
We have not gotten the green light for production. That's when it's going to be a go. It's still technically in development. I'm still technically in development hell, but we're really close to getting a sign off from Voltage Pictures. And then at that point, as soon as it's greenlit for production, and that's where the lookbook comes in, because they're establishing the expectations, they're finalizing budgets. Now I'm hopeful that it'll be done this year, because the producer wants to start principal photography at the beginning of next year. So I don't know what that means as far as scheduling. It's Hollywood. I have no idea. So, but I'm still in development.
Well,
or it is still in development.
We'll be keeping our fingers crossed on that one. And please, the moment it actually gets the green light, let us know, because we would love to be able to talk to you about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure I will be wanting to talk about that ad nauseum. So,
So for anybody who wants to know more about what you're doing, because obviously, I mean, you're wearing multiple hats. You've got so many things happening at the same time,
as well as a real hat.
As well as a real hat, yeah.
That's on top of my regular job.
Right. So you already mentioned your website. Is there any other presence, social media, Twitter, Facebook, anything on the intertubes that people can find out everything that they need to know about you and what it is that you're currently working on?
You're on the Twitter and
absolutely.
the Facebook.
I've got the whole media 9 yard, or social media 9 yards. All of my handles are the same, which is the weird spelling of Zachry, Zachry, Wheeler, Zachry Wheeler, and that's Zachry Wheeler at Facebook, Zachry Wheeler at Twitter, Zachry Wheeler at Instagram, and also at Goodreads. And those are my 4 main presences.
Yay!
And that's where I announce all of my happenings. So just follow me and stuff.
Cool.
Well, you hear that, everybody? Do that, because I think there's a really exciting future ahead of you at this point.
Fingers crossed. It keeps getting better, and I'm still waiting. I have to pinch myself every now and then, but yeah, it's been an exciting year.
Yeah,
it certainly has.
That's great. So thank you for being on the show this time, and thank you for sharing Max and the Snoodlecock with us.
Sure thing, and thank you guys. I appreciate you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you both.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. This is Zachry Wheeler, science fiction novelist, author of Transient and the Max and the Multiverse series, and you are listening to the Two Gay Geeks.
And here's a few selected birthdays for November 27th through December 3rd, 2017. November 27th, Bill Nye.
The Science Guy.
The Science Guy. Also, Jimi Hendrix. I love that. What was it? Is it a Coke commercial where it's in Seattle and Jimi Hendrix walking down the street and
if it's a young Hendrix.
Yeah, and if he had discovered something else, he would the
Well,
accordion.
an accordion, he would have been drinking Pepsi. Or I don't know. Yeah, if he'd been
Something
drinking,
like that.
yeah, if he went for the wrong soft drink, he'd be playing the accordion instead. He'd be a polka king.
Yeah. Also on November 27th, Bruce Lee and Anders Celsius, born in 1701. He was famous for.
The centigrade.
Yeah, there you go. November 28th, Karen Gillan and Randy Newman,
Short people got no reason.
among other things.
Well, but
And-
that's how that I think was his first huge hit.
yeah.
And I remember it just irked everybody because it was so anti-short people. Of course, the big irony is that he's not a very tall man himself.
Yeah, well, he's done lots and lots of stuff after
His
that.
movie music, on the other hand, is
Exactly.
not to be believed.
Yep. November 29th, Don Cheadle, Gaetano Donizetti, composer of opera, 1797, and Christian Doppler, born in 1803.
He's the inventor of the wah, 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 wah.
Well, he discovered that. The Doppler
Oh, he didn't invent it?
pattern. No.
Oh, I thought he invented it.
Silly. That was already invented by
oh,
somebody else.
Oh, God.
There you go. And also on, November 29th, we are on Chadwick Boseman
The
and
Black Panther.
the Black Panther. We have an interesting something coming up about Black Panther-ish
In the weeks to
information-y,
come,
newsies type
yes.
stuff. Also on November 29th, Mario Salieri. I don't know how he was a contemporary of Mozart. He was born in 1957.
1957?
Yeah.
Wow,
So
he
is
must
that-
have been like really old.
Time travel.
Time travel.
Yeah, there we go. Mario Salieri is actually a film industry person.
I wonder if there's any relation, though.
You never know. You never know.
I mean, Salieri's not, I mean, to my ears, that's not exactly a common name.
Yeah, well, it may be in Italy or wherever part of the country or world that.
No, the Salieri from the time of Mozart was Italian.
Yes. So also on November 29th, a friend of the show, Mr. Michael Cohen. Happy birthday, Mike. November 30th, Mr. Dick Clark.
He was the world's oldest teenager.
Yep. And Ridley Scott.
Great Scott!
Great Scott. And also Robert Guillaume, who passed away just a couple
Very
weeks
recently,
ago.
yep.
Yes. November 30th is also Samuel Clemens, most commonly known as Mark Twain, the
Who
author.
was born when Halley's Comet made its pass, and he died at the same when Halley's Comet made its next pass.
Wow. It's amazing. Also on November 30th is Gail Garcia Bernal.
Who is better known right now as Hector.
Hector, yes, in Coco. And we'll leave it at that. December 1st, Miss Bette Midler. And Sojourner Truth was born in 1797. She was a women's rights activist, a person of color. And it's amazing. She died in like 1875 or 77, something like that. I mean, she saw all the way through from almost the signing of the Declaration or the first years,
Earliest days of the government.
early days of the government, all the way through the Civil War.
Wow.
And was a women's activist. Also on December 1st, Marie Tussaud, born in 1761.
Now,
Madame
so we have
Tussauds.
Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, but what exactly was so? Were we getting wax figures and figurines back in her time?
Yeah, I mean that was a big thing. She was an artist, and I became famous for her wax museum.
Because we never really discussed the history of the wax figurine. I mean, we've got mannequins and such, but when you go to like a wax museum, be it Madame Tussauds or to a different one, like in San Francisco or in Hollywood, I mean, we never really discuss how the evolution of that, where it all started. I mean, Madame Tussauds is a name that is synonymously, it's always linked to wax figures, but we've never really explored the history of it.
Well, watch the wax museum.
Okay, that's the Vincent Price film, isn't it?
Yes. It has a little history, but not much.
Little.
Yes, little. Also on December 1st, a friend of ours, Ms. Erin Blunt, and also Matthew Shepard was born on December 1st. December 2nd, Maria Callas and Lucy Liu. December 3rd, Andrew Stanton, Andy Williams, Mr. Christmas, Edward Pulley, a friend of ours, and Corey Nelson.
Happy birthday, Corey and Edward.
Happy birthday, Corey and Edward. And Corey is a longtime friend of yours.
Oh, of all the friends that I've got, she's the one I've had the longest.
Yeah, so that is it for the birthdays this time.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.
Go give a listen to our friend Joe over at Geektitude. He just released his 100th episode.
Wow,
recently,
good for you.
so-
Good for you, Joe.
Yeah, hooray for Joe. And now it's time for... Do we have feedback?
Yeah, that'd be a no.
Yeah. No,
But you know, we have
no feedback.
No feedback. We have lots of likes and loves on the posts that we've put out there this past week, but nobody commented.
Nobody commented.
know.
Please.
We're not
We
loved.
love to hear from you. We really do.
Yeah.
You can comment on our Facebook post. You can comment on our website at tggeeks.com on any of the articles or any episode that we publish or anything. You know, comment on Twitter. You can even call us.
Mm-hmm.
You can comment on our YouTube videos as well as call us at our listener line. It's a Skype line. It's 469-TG-Geeks. That's 469-844-3357, and we will play your comment on air.
We've even had audio feedback on Facebook.
Exactly. So we want to hear from you, whatever it is. If you like something, if you don't like something, please let us know. And please play nice.
This is Mark Biaggi, and you're listening to the Two Gay Geeks webcast.
So right now, things are kind of dry
Just
in the entertainment news. There's
a little bit.
Yeah, there's not a whole heck of a lot that's going on right now, especially in the arena of pop culture. But there is still some discussion regarding two movies that have recently come out. The first one,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say the first one being Coco.
Exactly, and that was they were very optimistic about it because it did extremely well.
Huge in Mexico.
It was released October 27th.
Right in time for Dias de Muertos.
Yeah, and it actually was released in the U.S. on November 22nd, which for just in time for Thanksgiving.
And we saw it again.
And we saw it again. I was thinking about seeing it again yesterday
God,
or Friday night.
And we boo-hooed.
Oh, my gosh.
We so boo-hooed. I mean, again, this movie is absolutely spectacular.
It is such a wonderful film.
And for anybody who wants, I will put the link for the review in our show notes again.
Yep.
But holy cow, it's such a wonderful movie. But I'm glad to see that we're not the only ones who think so.
Yeah, and the box office receipts, they are projecting 77 million.
About 77 million for its opening weekend, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it puts Coco at number one again. So how many movies in a row?
Yeah, the Pixar had number one.
That Pixar has taken the number one spot. You know, if there's really only one universal complaint, and that is nobody likes the short that precedes it.
Yeah, well, enough said.
Yeah, we're just going to let it go.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Oh, my. You had to go there.
Of course I did. And the other thing is Justice League. Now, I'm finding this one a little bewildering. Warner Brothers was originally projecting domestically over 100 mil for its opening weekend take. They wanted to desperately have it compete against Thor Ragnarok, and it hasn't quite done that. They actually had to, I think they were projecting well over 100 mil. They had to lower that projection. It didn't make 100.
What was the first weekend? I don't recall.
It came 96.
96.
Yeah, and that was for them a failure.
Yeah, and they're projecting 60 million for this.
Right,
week.
this week it's making 60 million. Now, of course, it's going up against Coco. What I find totally weird in all of this, now the movie has just been going huge like wildfire overseas. It's crossed 400 million internationally and is zeroing in on 500 million worldwide.
And that's nothing to sneeze at.
That is nothing to complain about. And yet, because the movie is just now just between the last 2 weeks has now grossed over 150 million, Warner's is projecting this, and I guess the Hollywood insiders, they're projecting this movie to be a box office failure. I'm a little bewildered by this. One, I'm a little shocked that it's underperforming. I mean, seriously,
Yeah, because it's a good film.
it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, I've said it a dozen times. It's better than Batman versus Superman. But as a movie itself, it's really good. It's very self-contained. I mean, okay, so Henry Cavill's got a really weird CGI mouth, but take that out of the equation. I think it's a fun story. I like the characters. I think the casting is well done. Is it Marvel's best film? Is it Guardians of the Galaxy? Okay, no. But it's not a bad movie, and I fail to understand, A, why it's not doing better, and B, why Hollywood is, out 150 million, it's called a failure?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, and it could be that people are not wanting to see it because it's not the Zack Snyder film, and then that kind of leads us to the next point of some kind of push.
There is a movement, and I don't think it has any real steam to it, but there is a movement about stating that I know there are petitions out there that they're sending to Warner's stating that they want to see the original Zack Snyder cut.
I don't know why.
I'm a little unsure as to why, given that fandom generally really trashed Batman versus Superman, and they laid the blame squarely at the feet of Zack Snyder. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. I mean, that's Hollywood's reception or Hollywood's perception of how Batman versus Superman was dealt with. It did not do well. That movie was a huge failure. Everybody's blaming Zack. So now Zack, for personal tragic reasons, had to pull out. Joss Whedon came in, fixed up the movie. Even all the Hollywood experts say the movie was infinitely better. And I'm not going to go into whether Joss is better than Zack. That's beside the point. I'm just a little bewildered that people who really hated Zack Snyder's Batman versus Superman, now they want to say, oh, he would have made a much better Justice League. I sense a little inconsistency in fandom regarding that.
Well, if anything, fandoms are inconsistent.
Well, they can be. Oh, yeah, fandom is fickle. That's for darn certain. But I don't think the movie's a failure. I mean, okay, maybe there'll be a Zack Snyder cut when the thing comes out on home video or digital download. Maybe there will be a Zack Snyder cut that people can watch. I mean, it'd be fun to make a comparison, and it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. I looked to Superman 2, the movie that was originally started by Richard Donner. He was making that at the same time he did Superman the movie, but due to cost overruns, he had to stop production on Superman 2, focus solely on getting Superman the movie finished, and then got replaced for Superman 2. Richard Lester came in and finished that, but it was only about, I want to say maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago. Finally, Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, finally came out, and I will admit it's a superior film. So I don't think it's impossible that we could see a Zack Snyder cut come out.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be fun for comparison purposes only, and it would satisfy the Snyder fans.
Right. So
I mean, be that as it may, I think the movie is a lot better than what the experts are saying.
right.
Pure and simple.
Yeah. So that's
And the only other thing about that is people are really hating Danny Elfman's score.
oh, good grief.
I don't
Because he
get that.
borrowed his own themes and themes from other, I think that's a brilliant idea.
It was a
is
nice callback. I mean, when
borrow the original Superman theme.
You're right, when-
use your own Batman theme that you wrote.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith did that with Star Trek when he, after he did Star Trek motion picture and then didn't come back until he did Star Trek 5, but he revisited his own Star Trek themes in there, and then we didn't see him again until First Contact, and he's once again revisiting his themes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a composer revisiting previous work.
Yeah. Well, one additional piece of news that actually came out in the last week or so was the Incredibles 2
Yes,
teaser trailer.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And we have a first look up on our YouTube channel. We'll have it in this, a link to that article that has the link to the YouTube where you can watch it in that article as well. So take a look at Incredibles 2 teaser trailer.
Yes, we're hoping.
Looks fascinating.
It looks great. The movie. Well, I made some comment on social media that I couldn't wait for this movie, but as Pixar has shown, no good movie comes out before its time.
Yep.
So if it took this long for Incredibles 2 to be made, then okay, I'm good with it because I know that they're going to try to make something that's of fabulous quality.
Exactly. And as always, we have our follow-up items. Check out our calendar for birthdays, events, cons, film festivals, whatnot. If you have something that you want to let people know about, let us know. Send us a note, and we'll put it in the calendar, and we'll mention it on the show. And Phoenix Comic-Con returns to the Convention Center on May 24th through the 27th, 2018. They've already started announcing guests, William Shatner and several people from Guardians of the Galaxy and a couple of other people. So keep checking PhoenixComicCon.com for more details. Arizona Opera presents Candide, Leonard Bernstein's opera featuring the famed Glitter and Be Gay aria. This production is part of the worldwide celebration of Bernstein's 100th anniversary. It can be seen in Tucson, January 27th through the 28th, and in Phoenix on February 2nd through the 4th. Tickets are still available at azopera.org. Check out the third edition of Podcasting for Dummies, written by our friends T. Morris and Chuck Tomasi, and we're featured in that book a number of times. Go to podcastingfordummies.com. And we want to give a big shout out to GoDaddy for the great products and service they provide. They are our new web hosting partner. Hopefully you'll see some pickup in speed at the website. And
yes.
It's certainly better for us when we're trying to compose articles and episodes. So,
and we're not able to because we were having performance issues.
Yeah, with our previous. So thanks, GoDaddy. And we're huge supporters, as you know, of independent creators, whether it's filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, or whatnot. We found that there's lots of talent out there.
Fabulous
tremendous amount of talent, independent creators. Most of them don't get a lot of money, and some of them bring in their money through crowdfunding. So if you see a crowdfunding campaign or somebody that's looking for money in other ways, please consider supporting independent creators. You never know. You might be part of something big.
Special shout out to Doctor Who Talking Who as well as Human Arkle. They are both on Twitter. You can find Doctor Who Talking Who by going to Twitter, searching for @TalkingWho, and Human Arkle on Twitter can be found @Arkle. Doctor Who Talking Who publishes the Doctor Who Fancast Guide. Human Arkle posts the Arkle Times Post Dispatch News. I mention them both because they both republish our stories and articles, and we thank them both for it.
Yes.
So that's where you can find the Doctor Who Fancast Guide and the Arkle Times Post Dispatch News on Twitter. Look for @TalkingWho and @Arkle. And speaking of Arkle, he has on Tumblr the Incorrect Star Trek Voyager quotes. Lots of fun. lots of really weird silliness that is not exactly safe for work. So take a look at it in the privacy of your own home. We don't want to see any of you get fired for reading a naughty website.
And we want to give a shout out to The Lookie Show on Twitter. They are at Lookie Show, but more especially their YouTube channel is Lookie Show. They do they have an interesting way of doing movie reviews and television reviews. It is a hoot. Sasha and Dagmar, the twins, are wonderful. Check it out on YouTube, Lookie Show.
Special shout out to the Facebook group, The Gay Geek. Yes, the Gay Geek. Duh.
Yes.
I had a brain fart there. I'm sorry. Yes, the group is called The Gay Geek, and they allow us to post our episodes and sometimes some relevant content on their page as well. The URL is facebook.com/group/The Gay Geek, with our most heartfelt thanks to Jeremiah Reeves. He is their moderator. He gave us permission to share our content there. So thank you, The Gay Geek, and thank you, Jeremiah Reeves.
Thank you, Jeremiah. We want to remind you to occasionally click on our Amazon ads. It doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to buy anything. It just tells Amazon that we are getting traffic. If you choose to buy something, please use one of our search ads. We get a little bit of a kickback, so thank you for your consideration. And lastly, check us out on iHeartRadio and Spreaker and all those other places, as well as iTunes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will be adding some new things like the channel movie trailers, the first looks. We're going to have those in our channel. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll see those whenever they pop up. Next time, we're going to have author Terry L. Smith. She's a local to Phoenix author, and I've read several of her books, and really quite interesting. So check it out next week for Terry Smith. Okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this webcast episode. We'll have several links on the page, and remember you can comment on our Facebook page or our website, tggeeks.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.